Our next presentation is from Debbie Milne of Richmond Hill Agribusiness. Debbie is an agricultural consultant who is passionate about the use of objective measurement and new technologies to improve genetic gain for her clients. Debbie provides data management and MateSel as a service, as well as being involved in several areas of project management and previously and only recently out of seed stock breeding. Debbie will be discussing with us today how she uses MateSel for her breeders and put this into practice with real examples of how MateSel can be tailored to meet individual flock limitations and objectives. Thanks, Debbie.
Thanks, Emma. I'm just wondering if everyone would like to stand up and have a stretch, having been sitting for a little while. Perhaps please feel free to stand up, have a stretch, put your back in. All good, thank you. I just wanted to thank Sheep Genetics for the opportunity to speak today. And generally what I'm going to talk about today is some general observations about what happens when we run MateSel for our clients, and give you an example of how we've used groups to achieve a particular objective for one of our clients, and look at some genetic trends from other clients of ours. We've been running the old TGRM and MateSel for our clients since 2013, Steve and I. And generally what we do with a new client is we give them a questionnaire to establish what they're trying to do and what they're hoping to gain and where they currently sit, and what parameters they would like. So we developed a questionnaire for that. We mostly run MateSel for our terminal and maternal clients. That's not to say we don't run it for merinos, but generally the majority tend to be maternal and terminals. So talking about the first thing we look at is size selection, and in general for our AI joinings, most of our breeders will select their AI size themselves. And there's good reasons for that. Looking at the cost of semen, the requirements of young sire programs would mean that they're already committed to those particular sires. And the cost and availability of the semen and other traits they want to take into account apart from ASBVs. And also link size to previous years or within management groups and so on. So often our clients will select their AI size. For natural joinings, often they will select their size for the natural joinings as well, but generally, or quite often, they will have a range of young sires and allow MateSel to do the final selection that's actually going to get used. As far as dam selection, usually the stud breeder will have classed out their ewes and will give me a list of what ewes they want to use in the joinings, and often for AI, they will also pick the AI ewes as well. Not always, but often. They'll do a visual assessment, they'll look at the ewe age and past breeding performance in making that determination. For natural joining, quite often that's usually selected, but I think there's an opportunity here for MateSel to be used for their maidens to actually pick which maidens are actually going to stay in the stud. So you can use it as a classing tool, but generally most of our clients tend to pick the ewes themselves. So the other considerations we get them to decide on when they're looking at doing a MateSel run, because every flock is different. So we've got to look at what is the flock size and how many rams do they actually want to use, what's their effective progeny per ram numbers going to look like, how many paddocks have they actually got for single sire joining, because that'll affect how many rams you're going to use and how many ewes to go in each paddock. The number of AI versus natural joining, what sort of balance are they prepared to look at for that, from all AI down to a percentage of their flock. Again, semen availability, cost, the success of their AI programs in the past are all things that they need to balance. And the balance of older rams versus young untried rams. So generally they'll have an idea about how they would like to see that balance. As far as inbreeding, we ask them what's their level of comfort with inbreeding, and we have some breeders that don't want to go above 5% and others that are happy up to 25%. So it does vary, and you do need to ask that question. Generally, I would set it at 5% with some emphasis on it, and that keeps most people happy. And then traits of importance. And what I always suggest to people is that I'm going to run it just on the index only to start with, and that gives you a baseline level. So then if you start doing things with various traits, you can see the effect on what it's going to have on all traits, because you've got something to compare it with. So I'm now going to talk about an example that we ran this year for Iona White Suffolk, and I'd like to thank Ian and Sarah James for their permission to use this example today. Their objectives were to increase their flock average TCP, so they're looking at the index of TCP for their particular flock. They want to keep birth weight below 0.5 and increase growth, fat and muscle with their goals. And they also wanted to increase the number of potential stud sires that they could breed for their own use and also to sell as stud sires. So what we did to achieve that is we used what I called elite groups to achieve those objectives. So they had 262 ewes to join, they had 90 ewes that they'd previously selected that they wanted to AI, and so 172 ewes for natural single sire joining. All rams were selected by them, and then I went through and picked the elite rams and the elite ewes for these groups. And this is the AI rams that they had, and as you can see there was 5 rams, 3 of which went as the normal AI and 2 I selected as the elites. I actually ran this for them back in January, and since I did it, the ASBVs have changed, and when I ran it again and I looked at the ones I'd picked as the elite rams, they weren't one of them wasn't the second highest, but because I'd picked him because he was back then, I left him in because that's what happened. The natural rams, I picked 2 out of those 6 rams to be my elite natural rams, and I put a minimum use of 15 for all of them because they wanted to use all these rams. So I put a minimum use of 15, and then the young rams got a max use of 40 and the older rams got a max use of 50. And then with the ewes, there's 262 ewes and their average TCP was 143.8. So I selected an elite group of ewes for the AI, and their TCP was over 50, and an elite group of ewes for the natural joining, and their TCP was over 147. So the joining groups looked like this. So we've got our elite AI ewes up there, and there's 24 of them, and our elite AI rams, there were 33 doses. So the elite AI rams, or those ewes only got the elite AI rams, but because there was more doses available than the number of ewes, they also got a look at the rest of the AI ewes. And then the same again in the naturals, there was 28 elite natural ewes that only got the elite natural rams, and the rest of the possible maximum use of the natural rams went to the rest of the natural join ewes. So that's what it looked like. And it's a good idea if you're going to do this sort of grouping that you do yourself a mud map like that, so it's easy when you go to put it into MateSel, because otherwise you can end up in a mess. Or it can take you a while to sort it out. It's easy with a mud map like that to then clearly have what your groups are called, what's in it, and who's going to get joined to who. I also ran it to see the effect so that I could compare whether this was actually going to work or not and do what we wanted to achieve. So I just ran it with no elite groups. So basically we've got AI rams to ARUs, 90 doses, 90 U's, and the natural rams to the natural U's, and there was a max use of 260 in the natural rams. So to look at the results, what happened? So with elite groups, just looking at the achieved progeny mean index, so we got to 152.8 and the standard deviation was 5.2. With no elite groups, the index is the same because you're basically using the same sheep, so it was the same average index achieved. But the standard deviation was less, as you would expect. The inbreeding constraints, the achieved progeny mean with elite groups was 2%, and the maximum was 7%, and with no elite groups, basically pretty similar. So the average was 2% and the maximum was 8%. It's all well within the boundaries of what my clients were happy with. So looking at trait results with elite groups, the average, as we said, was 152.8, which is pretty good for TCP, and LAQ was 151. Average progeny inbreeding of 2.4, as we said. And looking at birth weight and growth, you can see the figures there, they were pretty good. With no elite groups, it was actually pretty similar. So really the only differences were the maximum TCP index was marginally higher, but there weren't a whole lot of big differences in between the two. And then I always, when I send my results to my clients, I always give them what the MateSel is predicting and compare it to the last couple of years of what they've actually achieved. So in 2022, this is where they were. That was the average of their 2022 drop. So their average TCP has gone from 149.7 to a prediction of 152.8, which is a reasonable gain. LAQ is unexpectedly better. 146 has gone up to 151. And as you can see, their birth weight is about where they want it to sit. It's gone down a bit from 0.34 to 0.3, which is exactly what they want. And their growth has gone up, and fat's gone up, and muscle's gone up. So we're achieving their objectives. I also, when I send this information out to the clients, also give them a comparison with their breed and the whole analysis. So looking at our other objective, which was to breed more stud sires, TCP, the top 1% is over 158.4. So I had a look at the two different results, and you can see those were the results for with elite groups, and there were 28 animals in the top 1%, and 19 of those were over 164. And with no elite groups, there was 24 animals in the top 1% and only 9 over 164. So if you then consider half of those are going to be female, but they're probably running at somewhere between 150, 180% lambing, it does give you a significantly more rams to choose from to breed your next stud sire. And I have repeated this in other flocks, and it has again significantly increased your number of animals that you might want to pick a stud sire from. So that was achieving that objective. Just to look at some general genetic trends, this is Iona's genetic trends on TCP, where they have always selected the sires and dams, so that selection hasn't changed. So from 2020 So from 2020s up here, that's when they started using MateSel. So they were generally sort of going along in line with the increases, and the green is the breed, which is the white suffix, and the yellow is the terminal analysis. So they were generally performing in line with the increases with white suffix and the terminal analysis. Since they've been using MateSel, and I'm not saying it's only MateSel, but since they've been using MateSel up here, the trajectory has increased. I also have a genetic trends report just to look at something different. This is Nailk South is a Corriedale flock, and they have been using MateSel since 2016, so from here. And again, they have made significant progress. The green line is the Corriedale breed, and the yellow line is the whole of the maternal analysis. And you can see that they've gone from being significantly below the maternal analysis to now just above it and going ahead in leaps and bounds as part of the Corriedale performance group, I think. And my second last slide is the genetic trends for Bruin, and I'd like to thank both the Jenkins family and the Gordon family for allowing me to use their genetic trends report in this presentation. Bruin, looking from around 2014, was using TGRM, and then when MateSel came in, started using MateSel. You can see, looking at the yellow line being the terminal analysis and the green line being the Pole Dorset breed, you can see what terrific gains Bruin is making looking at in using the LEQ index. Just on that, talking about all the things that you can do with traits, I always run it just without any trait manipulation to start with, so that sets your baseline, just to make sure that you're not having unintended consequences when you are changing various traits, that you know what you're gaining on the swings, you're not losing on the roundabout sort of thing. So I do recommend that people do that, set a baseline just using the index first, and then if you want to change things, make sure that the consequences for all your other traits are what you want them to be. So MateSel in general at the moment is most frequently used as a joining solution with some sire selection. I think you need to make sure that you're meeting your breeding objectives, so set those objectives first and then use this program to get where you want to go. I think the opportunity to use MateSel better is in ram and ewe selection. So when you're selecting your young rams, give it more than you need so that it can pick the best ones for the long-term health of and diversity of your flock. And certainly in ewe selection, like go through your young ewes and cull the ones you don't want, but if you've then got too many that you want to keep, so you've got more than you need to put into your flock, you can put all of those into the MateSel run and let MateSel select the best ones to retain in your flock, and then you can choose what you do with the other ones. So yeah, that's another use of it that I think could be used more widely, and I'm really excited about Brian talking about being able to use MateSel for syndicate joining, because I have a number of flocks that syndicate join, and I can see huge potential for making genetic gain for them if we can use MateSel better than me deciding which rams go with into which syndicates. Yeah, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Debbie, and I echo those sentiments re the syndicate joining.
Yeah.
It'll certainly make it less manual for those that are in those positions. So in terms of questions, top of the list, we've got what are the types of questions that you ask in your questionnaire, and are you getting all clients to answer a questionnaire each year, or do existing clients get a year off because you know what you need to do for them?
it depends on the client. All new clients get the questionnaire, and it basically asks what NX do you want to run on, what are your breeding objectives, how many ewes, how many paddocks, what are your limitations, how do you feel about inbreeding, where do you want to sit, what are your goals, all those sorts of questions. Generally each year, unless that, people will tell me if they want to change the direction they're heading in, and I always say, are you happy with where you're going? Is that what you want to continue doing? And if not, they will tell me. So they don't have to fill it out every year. It's you need all that information first, but they only need to tell me something if they want to change it.
The next one that'll be interesting to get your insights in from your client's perspective, but how important is inbreeding in terminal and maternal flocks where most of the rams are going over different breeds or used in crossbreeding operations?
It is an issue because if you're looking at breeding your own replacement sires or breeding sires for other people, then it's important in your flock to maintain your diversity. So inbreeding is important because you're going to be using some of those sheep that you breed. And increasingly terminal sires are being used as maternal sires, if you like. So we ourselves, not having a stud anymore, have bought in Merino White Suffolk cross lambs to grow out for 12 months to sell as maternal mothers. So, and that's happening across the terminal world. They're increasingly being used to breed maternals.
How many runs or mating outcome options do your clients look at before they land on their final mating decisions?
Well, generally what I'll do is I'll just run it on the index only and talk to them about the result, and then we'll decide what else they want to do, what other objectives they've got. Do they want to do this elite grouping type thing, or are there other things they want to do? Do they want to put more emphasis on different traits? I'll send them information that gives them that listing I had up before with all the different traits and the maximum, minimum and average, and look at those results and see whether that's what they're happy with. Quite often this is left until not long before they want to join, so there's a bit of time pressure in this. So it depends on those factors as well, how much time you've got, how much time they want to spend and pay me to spend doing this for them.
And it will be interesting too to see when we've got live capability to change things on the go, how that changes the way that we deal with each of those runs. So the last one that we'll take for this morning, when you compare the predicted averages to previous year drop performance, is MateSel predicting something close to how the animals actually go on and breed?
I'd love to say yes, but you never get 100% for your AI program, so it's never actually what happens. So generally it's a bit lower in the real world because you don't get 100% of your AI. And rams go up and down, as we all know. So I think it's more important to look at the longer term trends, which is why I always look at the genetic trends report and why I give people 2 or 3 years worth of data of what's happened and what the predictions are, so they can see the trend they're going on. So you can go up and down a bit in an individual year, but you need to look at the longer term trends, I think.
Fantastic. Thank you, Debbie. We appreciate your insights. I'll get you all to thank Debbie, please.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.